Here we go.
I begin today with my all-time favorite backup quarterback, who this year is making a grand total of $2.25 million, but who I think is better than the highest paid player in the history of professional football, the $50 million man, Dak Prescott, who was given this dumbest ever contract by the wacky owner of the most valuable sports franchise in the world, the Dallas Cowboys, I grew up loving and living for. Yes, once again, I'm in a rush to elevate Cooper Rush. I'm Cooper rushing to judgment about Dak Prescott, because I am as sure as a Brandon Aubrey field goal that Cooper Rush is better than Dak, that he just operates the offense better than Dak, that the Cowboys would ultimately be more confident with Cooper Rush at quarterback and win more games with Cooper Rush at quarterback. Even though, yeah, you got me. I know all too well that I'm ultimately stuck with Dak and with his contract and with his no-trade clause, and that I'm ready to commit Harry Carey over Jerry. You got me on all that. So, as you almost certainly know by now, Dak pulled his hamstring yesterday in Atlanta, and oh, faithful Cooper Rush, he's still there. He played the last 11 minutes of that football game in Atlanta, and glory be once again. I had the pleasure of watching Cooper Rush operate the offense as smoothly and efficiently as he did in 2021 and 2022, when Tony Romo said on CBS that Cooper Rush would get big money to leave the Cowboys and be somebody's starting quarterback. That, unfortunately for Cooper Rush and any team that could have had him, did not happen. No idea why not. Maybe we could ask Tony Romo. But hey, good for the Cowboys, who do have the best backup quarterback in the National Football League, one who should be starting for somebody else. Heck, he should be starting for the Dallas Cowboys. So yesterday, it did take Cooper Rush a couple of throws to get warmed up. After all, he hasn't played in any meaningless game, meaningful snaps in a season and a half. Think about that. Has not played any football that really mattered for a season and a half, and he gets thrown into the fire late at Atlanta. And pretty soon, I remember just how pleasing Cooper Rush is to my eyes. Watching Cooper Rush at the controls yesterday made me happier than any stretch of Cowboys quarterback play I have witnessed all season long. All season very, very long. Cooper Rush just makes me so comfortable, while Dak always makes me so nervous. Cooper Rush operates the offense with such effortless confidence, such stoic poise, such subtle flair. I mean, watching him, I always think of one of John Wooden's pearls of wisdom. Do you remember John Wooden, the great coach at UCLA for Bill Walton, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, then Lou Alcindor? Do you remember the pearl of wisdom? Be quick, but don't hurry. Cooper Rush moves the Cowboys quickly without hurrying. He never seems as frantic and desperate as Dak looks. Cooper Rush was trying to bring the Cowboys back against a pass rush that was just teeing off on him while he was being, quote-unquote, protected by a Cowboy line that just looked shakier by the snap. I mean, Tyler Guyton, the rookie out of Oklahoma, is every bit the wildly inconsistent project I predicted he would be at left tackle. He had 3 more penalties yesterday. Hall of Fame bound Zach Martin is just getting old right before your very eyes. Terrence Steele is getting exposed right before your very eyes. I think Tyler Smith has been hurt, but they don't say. I don't know what's going on. Just the rookie Cooper Beebe has been the one bright spot at center. Way to go, Dallas Cowboys. Yet this line, believe it or not, was having a devil of a time blocking a Falcons pass rush with the fewest sacks in the league. And meanwhile, CeeDee Lamb banged up his right shoulder, as I know you know, in and out of that game yesterday. And when he was in, Cooper Rush dropped an absolute dime on CeeDee Lamb. Deep ball descending down out of the rafters to the goal line. It's like it went up so high, threw it so high that it went out of the TV shot for a second. Straight down dime, right into CeeDee's hands. Should have been an easy touchdown if he could only raise his right arm, which he couldn't. So just with left hand on the ball, he dropped it. Then Cooper Rush threw another nice deep ball that Jalen Tolbert should have just left his feet and caught fairly routinely for a touchdown in the end zone. But Jalen Tolbert, frankly, just isn't that good. And finally, on a 3rd and 6, Cooper Rush hit Kevontae Turpin with a perfect throw in the worst place, right in his hands. Another drop. Turpin is such a weird player. He can stand still and catch punts and kickoffs coming directly down to him. Catches those no problem. But if he has to run a pass route and look for the ball over his shoulder or stop on a dime, go up for a pass with some pace on it that hits him eye high, he's pretty much a useless disaster. So this is what Cooper Rush was working with yesterday. And it began to work. Now, I realize I'm always ripping DAK for being the master of the fourth quarter garbage yards, but this yesterday with Cooper Rush in just felt different. This didn't seem futile. This was Cooper Rush actually making the offense and the defense believe the Dallas Cowboys actually had a real live chance to come back and win that football game. Do you think CeeDee would have sucked it up and come back into the game late if DAK had still been in at quarterback? Maybe, but I doubt it. Remember what CeeDee's mom posted about DAK? DAK isn't it. No, he's not. But CeeDee came back in late for Cooper Rush. Significant. That's because Cooper Rush threw for 115 yards in the final 11 minutes of that game, had a QBR 5 points higher than DAK, and led a late touchdown drive and converted the 2-point conversion pass that cut the lead to 27-21 with 1 minute and 28 seconds left. Brandon Aubrey's onside sorcery didn't work that time. Or Cooper Rush would have made the Falcons and their fans sweat. Yep, they would have been swag surfing on their own sweat if Cooper Rush had gotten the ball back one last time. Did Cooper Rush ever prove to be clutch in 2021 and 2022? Do you remember those games? But yesterday, even without a photo finish, once again, the Cowboys offense just looked different in the fourth quarter. It purred instead of coughing and wheezing. For 3 quarters, the offense had been an often unwatchable abomination of pre-snap penalty after penalty after penalty, including 12 men in the huddle on the 4th and 1. And of course, please drop the mic, McCarthy. It sanctioned an utterly dumb 4th down pass that had no chance, was not open. What are you doing? Through 3 quarters, the Cowboys looked so undisciplined. You saw it. You know what I'm talking about. They looked so poorly prepared, so poorly coached, that I actually at one moment fantasized Jerry Jones marching down from the owner's box, relieving Mike McCarthy of his duties on the spot, pulling on McCarthy's headset, and coaching the disaster he created himself. Yet, something almost as good happened in real life. Cooper Rush got another shot and changed everything. This team always looks so out of sync with DAK at quarterback, and I still say money has been the root of all evils with DAK. Be careful what you wish for. DAK, you got the biggest contract ever, and then you had to live up to it. And as a former 4th-round pick, you've been having to deal with pressure that contract is going to bring down on your psyche like the hounds of hell. Dak has been pressing and pressing and pressing all season very long. Dak had thrown 2 interceptions per game in each of his last 3 games going into yesterday. That was a first in his career. And by the way, was it just me yesterday, or did it seem like Dak was afraid to throw the ball more than about 6 or 7 yards down the field? Is his arm hurting him? Or is he just getting gun-shy, flinchy, panicky? Yesterday, again, he flipped so quickly to his back, so quickly to tight end Jake Ferguson with those little safe checkdowns. It was like he was trying not to lose, hoping to avoid interceptions. Protect the football at all costs by playing not really to win, just not to lose. Cooper Rush came out launching yesterday. Talk about downfield throws. Now, he obviously doesn't have a Josh Allen bazooka of an arm. But you know what? I think Cooper Rush's arm is as strong as Tom Brady's ever was, which obviously was plenty strong enough. And like Tom Brady, Cooper Rush is relentlessly accurate, which is really all that matters. So we already knew that Dak's lost most of his mobility. I don't know why. He's not that old. But even though yesterday he did escape for that nobody's home on the left side of the field 22-yard gain, I think I could have run for 25 on that play. I'll give you this, Cooper Rush is pretty statuesque, but he still has better pocket feet, just little side-to-side movement than Dak does. And I think now he's actually a little faster than Dak. Dak makes the entire offense uncomfortable. The offense clearly does not respond to his leadership, to his tone setting, to his jittery poise. I remind you, with Dak at quarterback, the Cowboys have been blown off their home field 4 straight times. 4 straight times at home. They have not been remotely even competitive. Obviously, the defense deserves its cowardly lion's share of the blame, but 4 straight times at home, Dak has spectacularly failed to set a poised, confident tone for this football team. I know you remember last January's home playoff game, 2 seed. Dak's team fell behind 27-0 before halftime. That's just wrong. The Packers won 48-32. Do you remember this year's home opener? Do you remember this? I got to remind you now, given what just happened in New Orleans. Derek Carr's Saints led the Dallas Cowboys at Jerry World 35-16 at halftime. They won 44-19 at Jerry World. This year, it happened. It was just so wrong because from that moment on, the New Orleans Saints proceeded to lose 7 straight games, and Dennis Allen just got fired. It's that team. They were up 35-16 at Dallas at halftime. Michael Thomas, their X-star receiver, has been going off and off and off on Derek Carr now for weeks. He went crazy on Derek Carr yesterday for throwing receivers into injurious situations. See Olave's concussion yesterday. I don't know. Michael Thomas, nephew of my man Keyshawn Johnson, may be blaming Derek Carr for his personal failures later in his career, but he did get hurt trying to catch footballs from Derek Carr. That's how big a mess that team has been since they were up 35-16 at Dallas. It's just so very wrong. Then you know what happened next. Here came the Ravens. Justin Tucker missed a 40-yard field goal early in the fourth quarter that would have put Baltimore up 31-6. That's at Jerry World. And by the way, Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence played against the Saints and played against the Ravens. They were completely healthy in those 2 games. And it was 35-16 against New Orleans at halftime, and it was almost 31-6 Baltimore early in the fourth quarter at Jerry World with Micah and with D-Law healthy. Are you kidding me? And, of course, the last time the Cowboys played at home, the Lions merely beat them 47-9. 47-9. What? This is so wrong. It is so rotten to the core wrong. Neither the head coach nor the team leader, making the most money in NFL history, have had the Dallas Cowboys remotely ready to play at home for 4 straight games. I want to drive home that point with Philadelphia coming to play the Cowboys at home. I mean, thank God for road games or the Cowboys would be winless. Now, no, you know what? Now that I think about it, scratch that. Too bad the Cowboys haven't played every game at home, or they'd be right in the Shedeur Derby. I said, remember, before the season started, Shedeur Sanders would be the best quarterback in college football and the number 1 pick in the upcoming draft. And a whole lot of experts disagreed with me, experts who are now coming around to Shedeur as the number 1 pick in the draft. Please God, he was born to play in Dallas. Heck, his father was born to coach in Dallas. Please God. So because of that, because of the possibility of Shedeur, maybe I should hope that DAK is able to play Sunday against the Eagles. As I tape this, obviously I have no idea if he'll be able to play, though it seems like a long shot if it's a hamstring that took him completely out of yesterday's game. So now it could be no DAK and, I don't know, no CD, or CD playing with one hand tied behind his back with that bum shoulder. Look, if CD were 100%, if Cooper Rush got a whole week of first-team snaps to prepare for the Eagles, I would pick the Dallas Cowboys to upset the Eagles, who are now 2.5-point favorites at Dallas. But if Cooper Rush gets thrown into the Eagles' fire without CD, well, I'll admit that will be tough. But even without CD, I will book this. The Cowboys will be far more competitive than they've been the last 4 home games with Dak Prescott at quarterback. Cooper Rush just inspires more calm confidence. It will be different even if CD can't go. It will not be an embarrassment. Do you remember what happened on Halloween night in 2021? I didn't know much about Cooper Rush, but he got his first shot that night. It was a Sunday night at Minnesota. Sunday Night Football against Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson. Big stage, big pressure for an undrafted free agent out of Central Michigan. And in something of a surprise to me, though it shouldn't have been, but I didn't know, Cowboys rose up around Cooper Rush's immediately calming confidence and won the game. But not until Cooper Rush hit Amari Cooper with a late clutch touchdown pass. Huh? Cooper Rush didn't get his next chance until game 2 of the next season. That was at home at Jerry World. Once again on Sunday Night Football against Joe Burrow and the Bengals, who had just been to the Super Bowl. Big stage, bigger pressure. Last-ditch Cowboy drive from Cooper Rush's 32-yard line with 57 seconds remaining. Boom to CD, boom to Noah Brown. Boom to CD again, walk-off field goal. Talk about clutch, Cooper Rush. Next came at Giants on a Monday night. Biggest stage, biggest pressure. Saquon broke loose for a 36-yard touchdown run. That was mid-third quarter. Giants suddenly up 13-6, stadium going berserk. And Cooper Rush led 2 straight long touchdown drives, completed 11 of 12 for 126 yards just on those 2 drives alone. 11 of 12 for 126. Sweet, pure, flawless execution that just made me so comfortable and so happy. Then came 2 fairly routine wins over Washington at home, then at Rams, in which Cooper Rush was routinely in command and in control, which led to the Battle Royal at Philly on Sunday Night Football. 5-0 Cooper Rush versus an Eagles team headed to the Super Bowl. Cooper Rush got off to a little bit of a shaky start. 1 bad interception, another not his fault. Suddenly it was 20-0 Eagles. And here came Cooper Rush. And the Cowboys went into the fourth quarter down only 20-17. They did not get blown out, did not get embarrassed. They knew their quarterback wouldn't fold. They knew he was made of the right stuff, strong stuff, tough stuff, trustable stuff. The only reason the Cowboys lost that game was that their defense failed to stop Jalen Hurts on 3 straight third downs on an endless touchdown drive that ate up much of the fourth quarter. Eagles 26, Cowboys 17. And back came Dak. And you know what happened. That season ended at Jerry World when the favored Cowboys led by Dak Prescott and Mike McCarthy weren't ready to play Jimmy G's 49ers. Remember that game? You sensing a Dak McCarthy trend here? Maybe a Dak McCarthy, Jerry Jones trend here? Yesterday after the game, Jerry did address the team out of desperation. He did address the media for the first time on the road in a couple of years after the game. And yet, it was one last hurrah, one last blast from the past, one last game of remember when I, yeah, we remember, at least the longtime fans remember Jerry. He said, remember when Michael Irvin tore up his knee? That was in 1988. And came back and won 3 Super Bowl rings. It can happen, said Jerry to the media and to the team yesterday. Michael Irvin did it. Jerry, 1988. What was that? 12, 24, 36 years ago? Come on, Jerry. You haven't sniffed an NFC championship game for almost 30 years. The past is way, way in the past. And yet yesterday, after the game, you're defending an Ezekiel Elliott who kept missing team meetings or being late for team meetings to the point, finally, Mike McCarthy said, way to go, Mike. Finally, you did something. Mike just said, that's enough. You're staying home. I'm not taking you to Atlanta. He was suspended yesterday, and yet Jerry defended him like he was Emmitt Smith. Once upon a time, he was Emmitt Smith. That was 10, 9, and 8 years ago. Jerry, you're living in the past. All these blasts from the distant past will get you nowhere right here, right now. So if Dak can't go this coming Sunday, I'm here to tell you, I'm just excited to watch Cooper Rush operate the offense Sunday at Scary World against the Philadelphia Eagles I picked to win the Super Bowl. I'm at peace with how Cooper Rush will perform, even if he doesn't have CD. And hey, if that's the only game Cooper Rush starts and finishes this season, if Dak is back for Houston the following week, I will just savor next Sunday as the blessed calm before Dak's storm returns. I'm sorry, this is the saddest football statement as a Cowboy fan I can now make. I just believe my Dallas Cowboys would be better with Cooper Rush at quarterback. On that, I need a sip of the Breakfast of Champions, nectar of the gods. A little Diet Mountain Dew. All right. Good news. Sunday's Cowboy game is on CBS, not on Fox. So we get Tony Romo instead of Tom Brady. Finally. As I've said, 12 trillion times, Tom Brady was by far the greatest NFL player ever, by far. But as a TV analyst, he's nothing but Daniel Jones. I'm sorry, but Tom Brady drove me nuts yesterday during the Detroit-Green Bay game with his endless, giddy, Captain Obvious blabber. He just talks and talks and talks some more about what is just so cliched obvious, so annoyingly obvious, so Patriot Brady talking to the media obvious, so eager to be nice guy Tom obvious. So little insight, so many words, so many on-camera close-ups. Hi, I'm Tom Brady. Yeah. We know. Unfortunately, we know, Tom. And by the way, speaking of Brady, who now owns a chunk of the Raiders, he obviously now has input into football decisions with those Raiders. Definitely had to be aware of, if didn't actually sign off on, what went down after yesterday's 41-24 loss at Cincinnati for the Raiders. The OC, Luke Getsy, fired along with two other offensive coaches. And I'm thinking, Tom, you don't have a quarterback. Getsy was stuck with, and this is his first year with the Raiders, Getsy's stuck with Minshew, O'Connell, Ritter. Seriously? Tom, you let Josh Jacobs leave in free agency. You don't have a running back. Tom, you traded Devontae Adams. You don't have a number one receiver. And now it's Luke Getsy's fault? That was small-minded. That was petty. That was cold-blooded. Sounds like the GOAT needed a scapegoat. So yesterday it looked like the Eagles were about to beat Jacksonville 30-0. Saquon Barkley had just pulled off the single most unbelievable move I've ever seen any running back pull off, and I've been doing this for a long, long time. I carefully watched Barry Sanders at Oklahoma State as well as those few years in Detroit before he prematurely walked out the door. Saquon suddenly went backward hurdle over a defender. I never seen that. Yep, this was a no-look reverse over a defender. A no-look reverse over the defender. Eyes in the back of your head? I don't know. I've never seen this maneuver in all my life watching pro football. He what? Saquon has been so much better in Philly, to me, than he ever was in New York. But then it happened. A.J. Brown walked off. He walked up to the locker room with a reported knee injury. He was walking, but he did not return. And the Eagles came close to falling apart. They did say after the game that they think he's fine. You never know, but he did not return to that game. Now, maybe what happened to the Eagles was in part because they were looking ahead, up 16-0, to the Cowboy game. It's a rivalry they take far more seriously than the Cowboys ever have. It's just in their genes, in their blood, as it is in Washington. But this also was because no team and no quarterback depends more on one receiver than the Eagles and Jalen Hurts do on A.J. Brown. Never seen anything quite like it. It's almost weird to me. I give you this. He is one bad motor scooter. He sets their badass tone. He detonates their physicality. He and Jalen did have a personal issue last season, a scary bad one. And the result was the Eagles went from 10-1, remember this, to losing 6 of their last 7. I'm told that AJ and Jalen did make some kind of peace. They forgave and pretty much forgot. But then a hamstring pull cost A.J. Brown 3 games already this season, and the Eagles just didn't look right in those 3 games, just didn't click, didn't detonate. So now he could miss Sunday at Dallas. I don't know. We'll see how it turns out. He could miss. Eagles could also be without Dallas Goedert at Dallas. And yeah, I'll point out to you, the Eagles would be 7-1 if Saquon hadn't dropped that little game-ending flip of a pass from Jalen. That was at Atlanta. That would have ended the game. But without A.J. Brown, this team just looks a little off, just looks a little vulnerable, just looks so much more beatable. And no, I would not at all be surprised if Cooper Rush beats the Eagles even without CD. But that's just me. Do not that many people actually see Thursday Night Football on Amazon Prime? are that many people unable to watch Thursday Night Football on Amazon Prime? I got to tell you, I was shocked at how little respect was paid to Garrett Wilson's touchdown catch that put the Jets ahead of Houston 14-10. Fourth quarter. Just might have saved and turned around the entire Jets season for Aaron Bleepin Rodgers. Where was the buzz over that catch? The acclaim, the awe? I'm here to tell you, Garrett Wilson's catch was even better than the greatest catch ever, Odell's versus my Dallas Cowboys on a Sunday night, his rookie year, 2014. The cornerback covering Odell on said play was Brandon Carr. I used to call him Brandon Hughes Carr. He fell down and out of that play. Now, Odell certainly did contort and did manage to stop and snare the football with just one hand, way back behind his head, as he got that one hand on the ball's spinning nose. But as Odell slowed and he fell, he didn't have to worry about getting both feet down in the end zone. He was slowing down at the front of the end zone and had the entire backside of the end zone to fall back into. Big difference, big advantage. Garrett Wilson's one-hand snag wasn't quite as all-time as Odell's, yet Garrett Wilson was tightly covered and had to one-hand the ball while simultaneously having to worry about how, while running full speed, he was going to get both feet down before the back line of the end zone flew underneath him. He got his left foot down and barely crashed his knee in bounds. Touchdown. It was a touchdown. Higher degree of difficulty than the greatest catch ever to me. I'm sorry, Odell. I've got Garrett's catch. To me, the 7-1 Detroit Lions have the NFL's best offense. Pro Football Focus says the Lions also have the NFL's best defense, even without Aiden Hutchinson. Wow. Pro Football Focus says the NFL's best team is Detroit. Man, they got it all, even without Aiden, who could be back for the playoffs. Jared Goff is completing a ridiculous 74% of his passes, yet he's only tied for fourth in MVP odds, when usually, as you know, the quarterback of the best team by far is either 1 or 2 in the MVP odds, but not Jared Goff, whose QBR is only all the way down at 14th. He hasn't been a stat freak this year. There's just something about Jared Goff that doesn't resonate around the league, outside Detroit, with fans everywhere. Maybe he still has just a hint of taint because Sean McVay did trade Super Bowl loser Goff for Matthew Stafford, who did win a Super Bowl with and for McVay. Maybe Jared Goff will just be viewed as a near star, as a pretty good quarterback, as a perpetual runner-up, until he finally wins a Super Bowl and a Super Bowl MVP for the Lions. I don't know. It could be this year. Matthew Stafford was spectacular yesterday in overtime in Seattle in ways Jared Goff just isn't capable of being. In just the pure ability to throw the football, Matt Stafford is right up there with any of the big arm flamethrowers, Marino, Elway, Favre, Aikman, right up there. And speaking of rocket launchers, hey, I still have Josh Allen for MVP, slightly ahead of Lamar, who just slightly passed Josh Allen for the QBR lead in the NFL. But I did pick the Ravens to win the AFC, and I'd have to say they're a slightly disappointing 6-3, considering that loss now 2 Sundays ago at Cleveland. But without Stephon Diggs this year, I didn't see Josh Allen with 17 touchdown passes to just 2 interceptions at this point, along with a 7-2 record. Higher degree of difficulty for Josh which means MVP for Josh so far. Okay, quick left turn here. And you can feel free to condemn me for not staying in my lane. But I'm going to give you my 2 cents about by far the most fascinating presidential election in my lifetime. Just for the record, I am neither Democrat nor Republican. I do believe in God, and I do believe in America. I guess you could say I'm a mix of conservative and liberal. I did not vote for Donald Trump either of the previous 2 times. But I must admit, I'm having a hard time convincing myself Kamala Harris will make the kind of president this country deserves. Now, I don't follow this as closely as I'm sure many of you do, but my biggest question about this election is, can't the United States of America do better than these 2 candidates? I mean, watching these 2 and their supporters fire back and forth at each other has just been so disheartening, so depressing. Ultimately, for me, so horrifying. This is it? This is all we got? Now, I certainly give Kamala this. As I tweeted that night, she surprised me by soundly beating Donald Trump in that debate. She so knocked him back on his heels again and again and again that she made our former president say no mas, no rematch. Yet, in so many other interviews I've seen her do, she occasionally loses her train of thought. She just rambles. And I start to wonder, is she really the kind of dynamic leader and decision maker this country needs and deserves? So I turned on the Democratic National Convention to watch Oprah speak. And as always, she was just so smart and so charismatic. Just such a rare, gifted human being that I sat back and I thought, you know what? If she were running for president, I'd vote for her. Then came Maryland's governor, Wes Moore. I didn't know him. You should look him up. He was so commanding, so compelling, so impressive. I just couldn't change the channel. I watched his whole speech. And when his speech ended, I sat back and thought, if he were running for president, I'd vote for him. Look him up. He's impressive. Maybe he's got a future, a big future. But Kamala, I don't know. The best thing I can say about Kamala is she'd be okay. Not bad, just fine. But rare, special, dynamic? I don't know. Maybe I'd be pleasantly surprised once she took over. But I believe that many people, maybe a majority of people voting for Kamala, are doing so by default. They're voting for Kamala only because there's no way they'd vote for Donald Trump. It's not that they believe deeply in Kamala. They're completely sold on Kamala. No, it's just that they have condemned Donald Trump as a far-right psycho who cannot be allowed back into power. I believe that for many, if not most Kamala supporters, this isn't really about her. It's just about him. Vote for her to counteract the misguided fools who are voting for him. For me, that sounds like double jeopardy. It could just be that neither candidate is qualified to run this country. But let me say this about Donald Trump. I do not share a number of his views, maybe many of his views, but I do believe he's a natural-born leader who isn't afraid to make tough decisions and who, however you want to explain it, has been very lucky through his life. See the little scar on his ear as opposed to a hole in his head. I'll go with lucky over blessed because I'm just not sure either he or Kamala truly believe in a higher power, truly worship that higher power, truly pray for divine guidance. I know what they've said publicly, but I'm just not sure either candidate has God in his or her heart. I have pretty good instincts about this, and I'm just not convinced. That, of course, that scares the hell out of me, maybe into me. But I will say this about Donald Trump. He does have what I call, if you will, some General Patton in him. You know General Patton from World War II, way before some of your times? Look him up. Donald Trump has some hard-ass commander in him. When we were at war, World War II, with the Japanese in the Pacific Theater and Hitler in Europe, think about that. Whew, talk about double jeopardy. I'm sure glad we had General Patton on our side. He was a bad motor scooter. Sometimes if you want to preserve your freedom from superpowers that want to take it from you, you need a Patton on your side at the controls, even if you don't believe in his politics. And then finally, allow me to completely leave my lane and swan dive into the deepest water. Then again, maybe this is my lane, but I do believe in the Bible, in the Old and the New Testament, and I do try to live my life by the Bible, and I believe with all my heart and all my soul that if our country does not support Israel, our country will fall. Please understand, every time I pray for the Palestinian victims of the Israel-Palestine conflict. I pray that it will end with some kind of peaceful coexistence, as unrealistic as that might be. But all I know for sure is that if we do elect a regime that turns its back on Israel, we will fail and we will fall. That's just my spiritual, biblical belief. It sounds like Trump is more inclined to support Israel. I know what Kamala said about doing everything in her power to end the Gaza conflict. I'm sorry, I never know what to believe anymore from one side or the other. Yet, every time I've nearly talked myself into voting for Trump, he makes another outlandish, outrageous statement that makes me question what he's made of. I mean, if you're Donald freaking Trump, you're a former president of the United States, you're arguably the most recognizable man in the world, one of the most successful businessmen in the history of the world. You don't need to lie or exaggerate or even embellish the truth. You should be so much better than that. You've earned being better than that. Yet too often, Donald Trump, to me, is a victim and prisoner of his own raging insecurity. He shrinks his own magnitude. I don't understand it. He reveals himself to be so much smaller than he is. He should be so much more confident in what he actually has achieved. It's real. It's right there. He doesn't need to stoop to taking petty, small-minded, bogus potshots. He can be so much more commanding than Kamala can be, so much more just in charge, that feeling of, I'm in charge here. He can be that when he doesn't diminish his own power. I like him much better when he's just boasting about himself instead of trying to tear down Kamala and other detractors, as you well know. And I'm not sure if Donald Trump ever really did read the Bible, if he ever got to this line, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. Vengeance is mine, saith him. But what do I know? I'm just a sports guy. I'm not even sure I can trust our voting process anymore. How many votes are being allowed from people who are not even U.S. citizens? I have no idea. Don't know what to trust anymore. Bottom line, whoever wins, I will support. Believe me, trust me. I will be praying for whoever takes over. That's because I believe in God that's because I believe in God far, far more than I do either of these two candidates. That's it for this episode. Thank you to Tyler Korn for producing. Thanks to Ernestine for overseeing. And thanks to my daughter Hazel for approving.